Ooh. We are live, unmuted, and on camera. Incarnation.
Issues.
It just keeps trying to time me. If I'm not switching. But you're good.
It is 4:31. We'll call the November 18th Finance Committee to order. We have two topics on the agenda tonight. One is essentially two of them are the two properties we have up for sale. Are looking to put up for sale the property at West Main Cross and also on North Main Street. And we'll discuss those. And then also, I don't know, Mr. Auditor, how are you on a Q3 review?
I've got a little bit of information to talk about.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. So we'll start with you, Mayor.
All righty. Well, thank you all. Oh, let's see if I can get this to. Love. Sharing that. I switched lips. There we go. All right, so just to provide a little bit of background about a Port Authority, it is a pseudo-governmental entity. And it is literally an independent political subdivision, which is why municipalities or counties are able to utilize it for the sale of property without going out to public auction, because we're transferring it to another public entity, and they were created with special provisions specifically for economic development. So they allow for flexible economic development in property acquisition, financing, and disposition of properties. It enables streamlined transactions rather than just a traditional public bid, when that means that it allows us a little more flexibility to have control over the properties. It's used statewide for strategic public-private partnerships, job creation, and redevelopment. So why would we use the Blanchard Valley Port Authority for both of these properties? It allows the city to sell property directly with a specific buyer in mind. When we've identified that it's in the community's best interest, it ensures our projects are able to be speedy, certain, and reduce transaction costs, and it aligns with Findlay economic development priorities and our strategic plan. Why I believe that the Port Authority is the appropriate mechanism in these cases. These properties and really these are both the general guidelines as well as why they fit here. The properties have been identified with an end user whose project supports community goals. The public auction is unlikely to generate better outcomes for buyers aligned with the strategic interest. The Port Authority structure ensures fair market value based on appraisal, and it helps retain and expand local employers while protecting the taxpayer investment. So how will the process work? Obviously, right at this point, we've been working to kind of negotiate and buyers that have come forward, as well as needs that we see in the community that had reached out. We do have appraisals on both of the properties, and then we bring forward discussion with City Council. So it does still have to go through a public process. Once approval would be received from City Council, then the Port Authority Board would take action on an agreement and then would work through the details. We already have kind of draft purchase agreements put together. So when the Port Authority would agree to a deal, they do it based off of the deal that we have negotiated. And they really are just a kind of, I'll say a shadow entity to it, right? They are involved in the process, but it really is just supporting the negotiations that we do. So some background on the specific properties. The Hostetler property was purchased in 2012 for $270,000 with the intent of moving the public health department there. It is not needed by city operations. We've used it some in the past for storage, but that is obviously not the highest and best use of this property. Getting it back onto the tax rolls, being used by local businesses is far more useful than being able to store items in there, and our departments have adjusted accordingly. Additionally, it doesn't make sense for us to try to put another department in there because as we look at our departmental needs. Keeping those departments together, not having additional security locations, not having additional, equipment spread out. We've looked at it as we shared it through our facility assessments. It doesn't make sense to put something else at that location. The fire station goes back even farther. The Findlay Fire Department ceased to use that property for actual fire response in the 70s. And then they did use it until the 90s for their fire prevention team. At that point, then we had the traffic department utilizing that space until about 2019, 2020, when we identified that our team members were getting sick from actually mold and sewage smell. And so obviously we moved them out of that space. There is a collapsed sewer line in that property that would have to be remediated. And a lot of other issues. I know those that walked through it today saw that it's not in great shape, and it didn't make sense for the city to put investment in there to get it up to where it would need to be for us to operate out of it when our team could be elsewhere in city facilities. So as I've been, kind of putting together, how do I explain the benefit of utilizing this? There's a couple of I can speak, it's a thing I can do. Key questions that I was repeatedly reading, that when you're considering what is the best process for a public property to move forward between a port and just public auction. So one of them, is there a specific buyer with a defined economic or community development project? So looking at the Hostetler property specifically, yes, obviously being able to keep Dietz's at that location and then be able to expand their business makes sense both for that business and the community as a whole. Next, will the transaction create jobs, retain a business, or spur redevelopment? Yes, Dietz's wants to retain that location. It will increase their capacity and additionally potential jobs, which I'll have Rob read a letter in a moment once I'm done going through this. Does the project require flexibility in timing, financing, or development terms? So specific to the Hostetler, the development terms allow for environmental remediation as well as a reversion clause. So we've been able to work through some of those details through this Port Authority transaction. Is maximizing the revenue the primary objective? No. Our goal is to make sure that this key property as a gateway into our community is best utilized by a local entity and not just trying to make a buck. Now, we do want to protect, obviously, the city resources that have been put into that property. And so this purchase price does recoup that expense as well as cover some of the additional expenses that would be required to get to this property back on the tax rolls. Is transparency ensured through council action and appraisal documentation? Yes. An appraisal has already been complete, and then obviously we're going through a council process. With that, I'm going to have Rob read the letter from Erica.
On December 7th, 2025, our company will celebrate 88 years of business. Over the years, our downtown location, where all the chocolates and ice cream are produced, has undergone several major additions and expansions. With each improvement, we've been able to expand some of our departments and hire more employees. We are at the point where we cannot really hire anyone else unless it's replacing someone that has left. We don't have enough parking spaces for more employees when we don't have the workspace area for new employees to work in. Expanding our warehouse and business operations will have a positive impact on the city in several ways. By increasing our need for seasonal employees, we can create job opportunities for local residents, especially during peak seasons. This supports the local economy and fosters community growth. Additionally, as our shipping department grows and we continue to send products worldwide, we enhance the city's reputation as a hub for quality goods and successful businesses. Here are some bullet points regarding our expansion. Over the years, many customers have requested outdoor seating for some type. We'd love to create an outdoor seating area for our customers, an area that is safe and accessible for our customers. In case you haven't noticed, for the last several years, at the end of the summer, we must get a semi-trailer from Findlay Warehousing parked in the back of our property to house additional warehouse items so that we can make room for perishable items like pretzels, sugar, and chocolate that are needed to get through the holiday season. For the last several years, we have had to request a parking permit from the city of Finley so that our employees can park at the back of the Hostetler property from October until the end of the year, so we have enough room for the customers to park. We have 24 wholesale accounts currently, with the request all the time to expand into other areas of Ohio. We are currently unable to take on any new accounts. These are just a few thoughts we could come up with on short notice. We welcome anyone to come to our downtown location and to our production areas and ask us personally what we need and why.
Thanks, Rob. So that kind of covers the Hostetler property. I'll go through the old traffic building and then end the discussion. So on the old fire station, again, similar analysis. Is there a specific fire? So one of the things that we did a couple of years ago, and Rob really led the charge on this, is I forget the entity's name, but the state kind of historical society came in and actually did an assessment of the facility, making sure that are there any like true historical reasons that the building has to be maintained in its specific. There is not, it's not like a national registry building or anything like that. However, locally, we felt like it was still an important part of our community's history and a cool building that we wanted to have preserved. So that was one thing we discussed. Is because originally our conversation was, what are the processes that we want to put together to go to public auction? However, then the union actually reached out to us and said, you know, we're looking for property to have both a union hall, but also a space that we would be able to rent out for small events. And then house some of the kind of historical artifacts related to the Finley Fire Department that we have some in city storage. We have an old fire truck, very old fire truck that we are currently storing, as well as some other items that they thought could be featured in this space. So that was one. Two is, will it create jobs, retain a business, or spur redevelopment? So obviously it's not really creating new jobs. It will help potentially provide event space and have, you know, local events being held and support local businesses that would provide catering or different things like that. But it will, again, we're seeing development kind of happen in this current corridor. And I do believe that kind of having new life breathed into this building will help the surrounding area as well. Does the project require flexibility in timing, financing, or development terms? Again, there is environmental remediation needed, as well as the structural sewage issues that need to be included. There is a reversion clause. So all of those did allow us to be able to put that in the Port Authority agreement to have a little more control. Additionally, being able to say, listen, this is an entity that is preserving part of our community's history and making the space usable. We felt like, again, it made more sense for it to be used through the Port Authority rather than just, hey, anyone who wants to use this. It is my understanding as well that the union has talked to a couple of local contractors that had actually reached out to us and were interested in the building as well. And they've actually talked about collaborating on some improvements and potentially adding either office space or apartment space in the top level of the building. So there would be, again, kind of public investment as well. Is maximizing revenue the primary objective? No, obviously we want to help cover our costs in the building and kind of match the appraisal as much as possible, but recognizing that preserving the building, making sure it is used long-term for the community's interests was something that we were trying to achieve. And then transparency related to the council action, as well as the appraisal being complete. Those are the slides. Is there any, before I just take them down for the viewing public on the live stream, is there any slide that you guys wanted to see again? Then I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that those on the live stream can just see our lovely faces in slightly larger form. Questions, comments on the properties?
For the public, would you explain what the reversion clause is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've just put stuff in there, and Rob can probably hit it on it a little bit more, but it's just stating that if for any reason they no longer want to own the property, it would come back to us so that we would then be able to reclaim it and then determine how we proceed.
Does it define the acquisition price at that time, or how is it defined?
It hasn't got that far yet.
Will it?
I would imagine there's gonna be more to it than just we have a right to buy it.
Yeah.
They can't stick us with a $1 million price.
My second question was, I haven't seen the complete paperwork. I didn't get a chance, I didn't get invited today to walk through, so I didn't get a chance to ask anybody. But The appraisal that I think I saw was affected by the alliance, is that correct?
No,
No, not on either of these properties.
So. Two higher for the appraisal, the one I read,
I think we both had Midwest appraisal on both of
Midwest.
them.
Midwest.
good, now it's through the city.
Yes.
That's great.
What did the fire station raise?
I think it was 110 or 120.
125-ish. Yeah. So that was done a few years ago, and then we went back to them to make sure it was current. And he said that there was no changes in his opinion.
Yeah, the sale price on that one is slightly lower, recognizing the significant investment that would be required to get it really habitable.
Now, typically, when you're going to get appraisals, you would have more than one. Have you considered having more than one? Because that price sounds extremely low.
We certainly can, that'd be the prerogative of council, however, they provided their reference points on other comparable properties.
Well, there's subjectivity to appraisals in terms of the approach they're taking, different methods that they're using, even within the appraisal. Different approaches.
Yeah, and they specify that different is listed in the appraisal.
That's the point. Well, that's why you get wide and varied appraisals, differentiated opinions, and when there are at least two, that puts you in a better position to assure parties involved is correct, and if there's a discrepancy, normally the two appraisers would pick the third appraiser to settle the discrepancy.
I want to like talk about environmental remediation. Who is responsible for environmental remediation?
Yeah, so on the Hostetler property, it would actually be shared, so there's a level that the city would be willing to chip in, that's built into the purchase price. And then if it exceeds that, then we would either renegotiate or they would.
We anticipate environmental issues.
There's some, so we've done a phase 1 and phase 2 on that property, and overall it shows that unless they're putting a well on the property, there's not an issue. However, they just wanted a little bit of certainty that if we open up the ground and discover something that was not in the report, that they have an ability to kind of work with us.
Was it a gas station?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or what? No.
But the tanks are removed. for instance.
That's my understanding, yes.
But we don't have any records, I think. That would be stuff.
And then there is some asbestos in the building that we have a report on as well, so that would have to be handled appropriately. On the old fire station, we have really, it is as is, they're responsible for it.
So I guess my question would be from a fiscal planning. How can we consider whether we have, or the level of our risk without a complete package that completely defines its terms?
Well, we've worked through that, and the law director is involved, and that's his job, is to protect the legal aspects for the city.
Have those terms been defined completely then?
We don't, there's not a stapled together 15-page, contracts yet. It's the bullet point terms that are out there to know how they were interested, and if we could even move forward to eventually have an agreement like that. And to hear input like this as additional considerations if they've been missed or whatever the case may be.
Then would it be prudent, I'm sorry, and this would be my last question, would it be prudent then, once those terms are reached, for a final decision to be made by this body at that time, rather than a preliminary decision that becomes final without seeing legal terms? In other words, otherwise council's flying blind if they don't know the exact definition, terms, and costs.
We have the specified definitions, we just don't have the full legal contracts defined.
That's what.
So, but again, that council is saying at what terms are they comfortable selling the properties? And then the lawyers work through what language needs to be included. So for example, the sale price on the Hostetler property builds in what the city is responsible for, and if it exceeds that, then there is an opportunity to either pause and go for a brownfield grant, or for deeds to cover any additional remediation, or to walk away.
That's my question. We're selling to the port for $250 something,
On the Hostetler property,
Yeah, what is
so 340.
$340. So, do we have the breakdown, Rob, of So remediation, how much remediation we're doing? I know you said at council, we're gonna tear the building down at our cost.
No, that's part of their cost, that's built into the sale price.
So
They're paying
what,
the $12,000.
what, out of the sale price, what portion are we setting aside to work with them? So you talked about remediation that will help pay for it. We'll have, what is that dollar amount or that percentage?
There was a dollar amount, there was an estimate for the remediation.
So
Yeah,
what is
so
that
we
estimate?
already have an estimate, let me pull it up. Let's see. Robert. All right, 1 second, I should have that one already. I have too many emails.
Very cool. It's very structured. Got it, got to first.
And
It's different.
mainstream.
My bottles of just, what actually. That has a good.
The terms are shall. You know, the mediation, guarantee, your resolution. Versus price, 74.
What?
Fire station. And at the time it was. Shape, so it's just a bit. The rest of it. Well, yeah, Jeremy was talking. What is?
That's what it was.
It's in the draft. It's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just show it to me? Was for the demolition. Well, you're making me look for things. If you haven't sitting.
One half. It was 18.5.
Can you just say that?
Say
the
that.
whole brick in here?
Our half of the remediation was at 18.5,
And what are they estimating it at? Cause you said it.
37.
18.
Well, no, but you said it could be more and that we might have to go back to the drawing board. So what makes you think that?
No, that's just saying, so based off of the phase 1 and phase 2 that we have a quote to do the remediation work, and we said we'll split it.
And what is
So-
the remediation work that they're saying?
Just cleaning the soil, cleaning up any remnants that are there because of being able to build a food production facility on top of it. But that is for them coming in and doing all the samples, et cetera.
So you have 18.5 in that.
Yep, and then it's built in that if they find something crazy in there that wasn't identified on the reports, then they have the ability to say that they're gonna cover it, that they want to apply for a brownfield grant, or that they just wanna walk away.
This site goes all the way back to 1880, seeing more about it. Like, Grain depot, livestock, gas station.
Yeah, but we've had the phase 1 and phase 2 environmental reports come in and they did a lot of borings and have stated that, unless you're putting a groundwater well on that site, that it is fine for the use that is predicted. So what Dietz's is planning to do is expand the backside of their building, have more production and warehousing space, and then tear down the existing building and most likely turn that into parking area and then have closer to their building preliminary plans, closer to their building, then some outdoor seating area, a little courtyard space.
Okay.
My only concern is that the terms be more defined prior to council. Final decision, that's council's decision. Because nobody else that races. Well defined.
For me, the question doesn't, I mean, come down to, do we like Deeds's? The building's a sound structure, so to me, we still haven't addressed. Is there a need for it? You say there isn't. We hear regularly that we're busting at the seams here. And we have no space for expansion on campus here. So is there any possible use for that building? There's nothing. The main building is solid. The garages could be useful for the street department or anybody else. I know we use it for the police department for trainings or whatever they're doing, but, so that's one question. The second question is, has Deetzes said, if we don't get this property, we're moving out of our original home and going someplace else? I don't think they're leaving, and I think if they want it, great, but I truly think it needs to be at public auction for transparency. I don't think the use of the Port Authority for this project is appropriate. Why?
Well,
Because I think we're picking and choosing who owns something when it's a main corridor into our downtown.
Yeah.
It's prime commercial space and there's no reason, if they might get it for less than 340. They might not, but it's not bringing in big amount, it's warehousing. I would love to see them partner with Ohio Logistics or somebody else to help do their storage and transportation for them. And keep that space. My other comment's gonna be, we've been talking about loitering in the downtown and the concerns, and that's right next to the city mission. Are they gonna end up having problems with people hanging out in their gazebo areas and messes? I don't know, I hope not. Huh?
private property.
Well, sure, but they have to be able to address it all the time.
So can I just,
So those are all the pieces, and I just don't see, I guess validate for me. The Port Authority, for you.
No, you're not validating the Port Authority. Your issue is letting it go to a single individual. Rather than the Port Authority is just a vehicle. It's just an instrument. So your issue is not with the Port Authority. It's just the method that we're going about on the transfer of the property, correct?
No, both. So one,
So you hate the Port Authority? I'm trying to understand how the
so
Port
don't
Authority
use
plays
the
into
word
this.
use. So the Port Authority is a mechanism.
Yeah.
To use when appropriate.
Correct.
And when we are a city government entity, we have govdeals.com, we have to show everything, we have to document everything that we're giving it open to whomever. When we sell a vehicle, when we do whatever, property is no different for me than selling a police car.
So
Or
your
some,
issue is not putting it up to public auction.
because it's a process.
It has nothing to do with.
No, it
It's just an
does.
instrument.
No, I think we're abusing the Port Authority.
That's the way that's the way the law's written.
No, it puts you into a gray area.
so what, I have two questions. Well, let me back up and address a couple things. One, they have already thought through concerns on folks hanging out on their property. That is their prerogative to address how they see fit. So that is private property and they can address that. Two, they have not, as partially as you may put it, we're gonna move, but they have explicitly said that we cannot continue to stay at this space and grow our business. And that is a real problem, I think, for all of us, if we recognize the value that it provides, the draw that it is, and that we want to see businesses continue to grow. My question to you would be, what is an appropriate use of this property? And what is an appropriate use of the Port Authority process? Because this, in my opinion, this is exactly what we should want to do, is identify a good use, how it supports existing business, how we can control to make sure that it is a key gateway area and that it is if they came to us and said, we want to have Deetzes expanded on the ground floor and then have a, 3-story beautiful complex, yeah, that would be great. But that's probably also not a great fit on that parcel. So what do you feel is a better fit there, or when would you?
I don't think it's my decision to say that. I don't know what council members have been contacted. I've had at least 3 different individuals reach out that have tried communicating that they've had interest in that property. And none of those ideas came across as a negative into our main hub coming into downtown. Some of them I think might work well with.
Can you give us some examples?
Well, one of them was, somebody wanted to put a coffee donut shop in over there.
But
Somebody
that
else-
can also go at lots of other locations where Deep's would be harder too, right?
That's not. the
No, because that is
discussion.
a pertinent thing. That is a pertinent part of this
So-
discussion.
So one was that somebody else was interested because there was the garages in the back of having a business that could use the garages. I had told you a couple of years ago and that, you know, we had a government entity that was interested in it, which was Veteran Services. Well,
They
and
looked at it and it didn't make sense for them.
we have different stories on that. So there's been,
They didn't move there.
it wasn't offered, but we're not gonna stick on that. They found a home, they're gonna do just fine. However, all of those things are opportunities that aren't negatively impacting our. And I love Deetz's, I have it way too often, but I'm able to separate on that, and they've always been there, and I'm all for them buying it, and if they could buy it even cheaper. And we're not getting in the middle of having things that aren't completely clear as far as remediation or whatever. And it's just a clean deal, great. And Deetz's does fantastic. I think they could afford it. I don't think. We don't know what it's gonna sell for. I don't have a crystal ball, you don't. But we are eliminating a process, a government process, and that's the part I just can't get past. And then as far as the Port Authority goes, the Port Authority had Veteran Services wanted that. To me, that would have been a proper vehicle to make that transaction. Government entity to government entity. That would have made sense to use a Port Authority to avoid public auction, right? But for retail business, I just don't see it. I don't see that we have defined that we don't need that building. We've been this came up in 18. And we never had the discussion. We just stopped tearing down parts of the property, right? And then we've sat there and we've brought it up and there's been statements said, where do we need to expand? What do we need to do? So I don't think we've addressed either one of those things. I think Jim gave valid concern that we don't have the full contract picture. I'll just leave it at that. We're not gonna agree.
Council we can sit all day and talk about possible other opportunities to make them along in the bidding process, but my experience with municipalities having an opportunity to sell something and having an opportunity like in this situation because of the RFI's Code Port Authority rules, I think it behooves council to want to have control, not considering opportunity, but control. I don't know the exact zoning of this area, and I'm famous for my bad examples, but I wouldn't want to see a Dollar General going. I don't want to see a pallet yard. Not in that close to town area where you've got the West End and Deetz's, then the Marathon and all these areas, then to see whatever's permitted by that zoning going there, just, you know, trucks going in and out, pallets are stacked, whatever the case may be, in or a Dollar General. To hypothesize, it could be a coffee shop, it could be this, that's great. That's the open bidding process, and your coffee shop turns into a Dollar General. Control, I think, is the overpowering idea here because we have that opportunity. You don't always have control to sell a used truck. But you've got control here with real estate. I think that's an important consideration.
Rob, in an open bidding situation, do we have the ability to put stipulations on the sale?
Not stipulations, but you would be getting bids and you don't have to accept any.
Right.
So you could weed out, you know, a bad idea store, maybe, but then I don't want to have council be accused of how they're deciding who stays and who doesn't, who's good and who's bad, but they could. When you read the exact law on selling property through the bidding process, a city or village or whatever could not accept any, choose not to accept any of the bids. But how long are you gonna go through that process?
So would we be able to though say it's got to be retail and it's got
No.
to be, could not? No.
Even if
So
we
we
rezone
do
it.
open ourselves up for a
Well,
wide
but-
variety of
His
possibilities.
example is we control it and we can get bids and then say, oh, we don't like your bid. Well, that's the same. Authority, you're
Right, so
eliminating
you're
that
right.
entire discussion.
But you open yourself up for that if you go to open auction. You can't say no in your opinion.
Well, no, it's that council doesn't have the cojones to say no if we go with open auction, because he just said, are we gonna go and say, oh, we don't like you, we're not gonna put that property,
But
well,
your-
that's
your
what we
thought
would
is
be
you
in.
want this to go to open auction. That's what your choice is.
I want it to
So-
be transparent, open auction, and we are sidestepping. We're
Okay,
sidestepping.
it's transparent. Everybody sees every document that's going through in this process. It's all there. That doesn't mean they don't exist. You just haven't chosen to look at them. It's out there. Everybody can see every document that goes
So you've seen everything.
the everything that's been made public.
Jim hasn't.
Well, Jim hasn't asked for it. Done yet. They're
No,
not
the,
finished up.
the ordinance, the specific purchase agreement has not been finalized. We certainly can share that privately in executive session on the third reading, but the details that are necessary for council approval are included in the ordinance. I would share too, that if we are saying, listen, we want Deetzes to be able to expand, and therefore the city is partnering with Deetzes to make this transaction happen, that doesn't prevent Deetzes from, if somebody wants to put a coffee shop on a portion of the property and they can work that into a design, that doesn't prevent those two private entities from working through that if folks have interest. What we are responsible for is determining what is the best use of this property based and being able to have a business that would otherwise have to either stifle their growth or relocate seems like a good option. The only other items on that one, we want to talk about traffic. I guess just are there questions on traffic, just because I know we don't have a ton of time.
I was told that it is zoned light industrial. For anybody who wanted to know that.
Which would be consistent with food production and expansion, or they could join the parcels as well.
But Bill, what property were you talking about? Deeds is still? Or you're talking about?
Other
Just putting that
questions?
out there. Wasn't.
You wanted,
No, just other questions or comments?
okay.
Jeff, I'm sorry, you scheduled this thing for 5, I have to excuse myself.
No, I scheduled this till 5:30.
I've got what I think I'm gonna do, I'm sorry.
Do I have a motion?
Well,
Okay, further discussion.
on deep, where are we at? Are we done with everything?
Well, Awesome.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, motion.
Yes.
Not sure exactly which way we're trying, but I would move that we go ahead with Port Authority sale to Jesus.
Motion is to move forward with the Port Authority sale to, do I have a second? I have a second. Discussion. Very good. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes. Very good. Moving on to the North Main Street property. Conversation there.
You said that, sounds like I would want that building with the smell and all the problems, but whoever is wanting to buy it knows that needs fixed and they're gonna pay for all that, right?
Correct.
And we determined that there was no smell in the building today. That where it was broken, they capped it at that area. So it's not that everything's collapsed. They were able to cut back and cap to the main line. So they're just putting in new, is what it sounds like to me from that discussion.
It's pretty, it's much more extensive than that.
Well, I thought.
The
it was they
laterals
were
collapsed all
broken
over the main line. So
Yeah,
that's
we
why.
didn't let just sewage seep it.
So it's just putting in new. But we didn't want to put that cost into it, right?
It didn't make sense for us to, correct?
It's a great structure building. It's really unique. My question's for Rob Fightner on that.
Go ahead. Ollie.
So my question to you, again, using the Port Authority, and in this instance, we're selling to our local fire union. Do we have any legal repercussions on that? Because that's city employees and bypassing public auction again.
Well, it theory is strange as these laws work with the Port Authority, it's the Port Authority transferring and selling to the fire unit.
But we have full knowledge. So we don't, so my question is, do we have any, are we opening up a can of worms of liability of any kind if there were to be an issue?
No, so we don't have to go out for an open bid, you're using the Port Authority. So we're basically understanding who the end user may be, but still that goes through the Port Authority. I know this all sounds strange, but the Vice Code, actually the sections on it, under the Port Authority sections are pretty short and clear. Strange as it is for most people to think that any sale of real estate by a municipality has to go on to do a bid process, but gee, lo and behold, if you have a Port Authority in your jurisdiction, which we've had since 2007, you can skip all that. Really, that's what it comes down to. The real issue is having the council be on board with the transaction, the purpose of the transaction, making a finding that there's not a public purpose. The public, lack of a public purpose consideration is reasonable. I mean, we can always come up with a public purpose for anything. You don't want me to get any more bad examples, but a legitimate public purpose being overlooked is an issue for council to decide. So that's how all this gets vetted out, and then off it goes to the Port Authority.
What was the approved price or the agreed upon price?
For the low traffic building?
Yes.
100,000.
And we're not putting anything into it. We're not doing remediation.
No,
No, no, as is.
as is.
And did we ever consider it for the museum?
The historical museum?
They were one of my first phone calls. I went down to dealt with them, talked through things with them, and they were like,
They don't want it, they got that building file.
I know they have a lot to manage, but I didn't know if that was a
I
good.
generally don't allow questions from this time. Last time I did that, we had quite an issue, so I've been more than happy to ask afterwards.
Can we consider new council members coming in if you have a question? To me, it does.
It's still public. Glad to answer.
I would, I mean, if I were allowed to make a motion to allow, I don't know, I would assume he's done.
Other conversation on this. Do I have a motion? One direction or another?
Motion to recommend the sale of the traffic building to Port Authority. Our process was through
Correct.
to the union through the Port Authority.
Right. Very good. We have a motion on the table to move forward with sale to the Port Authority on the 401 North Main Street discussion. Seeing as there is none, all those in favor, say. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you get a second? I'll second. Second by no, thank you. Now discussion. Same issue. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed, nay. Nay. Motion passes. Very good. Well, since the auditor left, that's gonna make having the schedule Q3 a little difficult, so we'll have to reschedule that at a different date.
I did just one moment. You pull up, I can give I can provide what year to date is in the interest earnings revenue line item for the general fund. The general fund.
How are you feeling about Port Authority?
Yeah, let me answer this question first. So the budget for interest earnings for the original budget was $899,980. Year to date through October, we were at 1.8 million. Looking at, the revenue is up for Q4 a little bit overall, but we expect it still to end overall down as we kind of anticipated. Looking at our budgets, because departments already have their budgets submitted, we're projected to turn back in over $4 million from the original appropriation. So about 10% of the approved budget is expected to be returned. So the departments, just as we said they would do, really manage their budgets throughout the year. We certainly had some departments that had a hard time. I'll use fire as an example. We were really on track to have hit that 5% as requested. And then we had a fire a couple of weeks ago where about $150,000 of equipment was damaged. So some of the chemicals that were in the fire area and oil and things that got on the equipment.
Some heavy engine repairs.
Yeah, and then, yeah.
Unanticipated.
couple
Yeah,
of-
fire where?
At Cooper.
Oh.
And then we had a couple of the fire engines that had to have some repairs done, but overall, teams manage the finance as well, so. We say departmental operations is giving back over $4 million, we'll have just a slight deficit with the $5 million. Appropriation, just about $5 million for the park investments and other capital appropriations, so. We're getting all the budget hearing packets.
So we're projecting a $5 million deficit.
It'll be No, I said we're returning from operations about $4 million. And then we had the $5 million appropriation for the parks and other items that were unbudgeted. So we will have about $1 million deficit, probably a little bit less, but obviously we still have about a month of operations. But that's, we made a large capital investment out of our revenue or out of our reserves as we've been kind of building up over the last couple of years, recognizing that we were going to have some big appropriations, so. All right.
Anything else for the good of the order? Without anything else to discuss, I'll call this meeting to a close at 5:17.